One of the most difficult life transitions that many people go through is the financial transition of going from married to suddenly single. How does your planning need to change when you suddenly become a widow or widower? We got that and more coming up. Welcome to the Wise Money Spotlight, our monthly deep dive into one financial concept, helping apply it to your financial life so that you can take your next wise step. My name is Mike Bernard. I'm the host, and with me in the studio today, special guest CFP Tayler Rhoda. Now, today we've got a tough one. It is both a very emotional topic, but also one that has a lot of financial ramifications, and that is when you're in retirement or planning for retirement or already a few years into retirement, suddenly becoming a widow or widower. Now, you might say, this is my circumstance right now, and I hope that this conversation's helpful to you. But if you're thinking, nope, that's not me, that's not my situation, this could become your situation out of the blue in a very tragic and emotional and challenging way, and we want to help you with that. So, Tayler, welcome into the studio. Taylor's one of our all-star CFPs and graduate of Purdue, small school here in Indiana. And Tayler helps, 100 or more individuals and families. She specializes in all 6 areas of financial planning, of course, but really has a specialty, and it's really grown in retirement planning. And you actually do serve a lot of widows and widowers. So total curveball here, but you've got some exciting stuff going on in your personal life. Tell us about that.
Yes. So I am getting married in 29 days. And so in the middle or towards the end of wedding planning.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Exciting. So, and Adam's a great guy. Excited for you.
Thank you.
So it's very hard for that exciting news and for us to talk about this really tough emotional topic, but finances and financial planning, it's where real life and finances intersect. So we need to talk about some risks and some emotional stuff. And so a sharp turn here, Tayler. When someone loses their spouse, emotionally, it's just very heavy, very, very difficult. But what are some of the first things financially that someone needs to be doing?
Yes, and you hit it perfectly. So the emotional weight of someone losing a spouse is very overwhelming. And you know as well as I do, part of our job is, yes, the technical side, but it's also the emotional support we offer to our clients in those times. And so the loss of a loved one can really make the ability to make those complex decisions that happen when you lose a spouse. It can feel paralyzing, or you can feel paralyzed. So in the beginning weeks and months after first losing a spouse, I really advise my clients, let's make as few decisions as possible.
That seems counterintuitive, but absolutely.
So the first thing we want to do is triage. So let's figure out what are the most important items that need to be handled right away. Things like making sure our bills are paid, making sure we have access to passwords. Do we have income coming in? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I think, and part of that is in response to you've just had this awful situation that you can't control. And sometimes there's a feeling of, well, I need to do something because there is this either, subconscious desire to control something. And so some of the common ones are move or give away money, which might feel strange, but it's I want to do something with this. And maybe make a list of those sorts of things, but pause, take a beat, and delay making some of those really, really big decisions. Agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when it comes to, we were just talking about this before we started recording. This could be wrong, but the sources out there are saying the average age someone becomes a widow is 59. I feel like that needs fact checked. I still am not sure I fully believe that, but if this seems to happen near retirement, or obviously often in retirement, there's 5 factors that shape someone's ability to retire with confidence. And retirement income is one of those. And that's one of the things that can change significantly when you lose a spouse. Let's get into that.
Yeah, that's an important point, because retirement income doesn't stay the same after a spouse passes, especially once you've reached that retirement age. So there's 3 main shifts I would say that we need to be aware of. The first one, Social Security. And so if you and your spouse are already drawing Social Security, typically you go down to one benefit, and it's usually the higher one.
Yeah.
And so that can create a big loss of income for the household. The next is pensions. So if you or your spouse are collecting a pension, the spouse that passes away, if they had a pension, typically if there's a survivor benefit, it's either going to be 50, 75%, maybe 25%. Very rarely do I see a full 100% survivor benefit on those pensions. So again, another reduction in that household income. And the next is required minimum distribution. So when one spouse passes, those required minimum distributions, those IRA pre-tax dollars are still there and need to be taken. But instead of falling on a joint tax return, we'll get into this in just a moment, but they will eventually fall on a single tax return.
Yeah. Let's go back to the Social Security one. Obviously, this is a big question we get all the time. There's some people out there that are very aware of these survivorship rules. Others just assumed, well, I just get... So some people assume I just get to continue to keep both. Unfortunately, that's not true. And then I think a lot of people logically just assume, well, I'll just continue to keep my own Social Security. But it's yours or your spouse's, whichever is higher. That's the survivor benefit with Social Security.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. There's also a unique planning strategy with Social Security that a lot of loopholes for advanced planning strategies with Social Security have been closed. But if you're a surviving spouse and your spouse passed away earlier, technically you can still claim Social Security at 60. You can do a restricted application. So there's some unique planning strategies. So if this is you, this is hitting you, and you're planning ahead for these sorts of things, make sure you're working with a CFP. Obviously, losing a spouse is going to have tax implications and can sometimes lead to something called the widow's penalty. So Tayler, share what is that, and then some of the tax planning that is needed during this difficult stage.
Yes. So the widow's penalty, it's a tough one. It catches a lot of people off guard. And really what it is, so when both spouses are alive, you often file a married filing jointly tax return, which means wider tax brackets and lower rates on the same income. But when one spouse passes, the survivor now has to file as a single taxpayer starting the year after the spouse passes. So you might have the same amount of income or a little bit less, but still higher. But it's falling on a single tax return. And so those RMDs that are coming in, the Social Security that's coming in, you're paying taxes on the same amount of income, but they're falling on a single tax return.
And that single tax return, the tax rates are the same. Still it's 10, 12, 22, 24, and so on. However, the brackets, which means the amount of income that lands in those different tax rates, is about cut in half. So if, we were just talking about it, pension may go away or be reduced. Social Security, one of them's going to go away. But the required minimum distributions, or say there's still a mortgage in retirement, and so you're still pulling a lot out of your investments. If that is staying the same, you've got that same amount of income landing in much smaller tax brackets. So we typically find people that, if you're in the 12% tax bracket in retirement, that's fantastic. Hopefully you're doing Roth conversions and so on. I'm going to ask you about that in a moment, Tayler. You likely will find yourself in the 22% tax bracket if you're single. Yeah. So what are some of those tax planning strategies that maybe could be considered early in retirement, not planning for or bracing for, well, one day I might have that last, life transition where I'll be single again. But what are some tax planning strategies that may make sense that could help someone through this transition? I mentioned one, the Roth conversion. But are there others that maybe you want to expand on Roth conversion?
I would say Roth conversion is really the main one. And so really getting proactive while both of you are still here, looking forward to say, okay, what are our required minimum distributions now? And is there any room in my tax bracket each year for us to maybe fill up that 12% tax bracket to reduce those required minimum distributions in the future, to get that money moved over to Roth, growing tax-free forever. Because once the money's moved over for the Roth, we don't have to pay taxes on that ever again.
Yeah, whether you're single or whether it gets inherited by the kids. Actually, I remember an instance where the two of us and Amy Masters, who's been on the show before, I was saying, well, I've got a couple right here. One of them has some challenging health issues that she's working with, but they're in their mid 60s. They're in the 22% tax bracket now. I'm projecting out into retirement. They're still going to be in the 22% tax bracket. Should we do Roth conversions? And without any hesitation, you both said yes. And I said, well, why? And the primary answer was, well, all it takes is if one of them passes away, they're no longer going to be in that 22% tax bracket. That single individual will have to pay taxes at a higher rate. So, and we've been doing tax conversions for that couple ever since. Investment strategies can shift as well when you suddenly become single. Talk through that a little bit.
Yeah. So losing a spouse, not just an emotional shift, it's a financial one too. And so suddenly when you're single, when you're used to having this life partner to make decisions with, when you're all of a sudden making those decisions alone, it can really change your comfort level with how much risk you're taking in your portfolio. And so we have to reevaluate what is our risk tolerance now and how much risk do we really need to take in order to create the amount of income that we need to survive.
Hey, have you seen any trends with this as you've worked with, because I've seen some, I'm curious your experience, seen any trends as someone is suddenly single and now has the stewardship responsibilities of making investment decisions? Any trends stick out to you?
Definitely. So I work with a handful of widows, and something I hear over and over again is my husband handled all the finances. He's the one that handled all of the investments. I don't understand any of these things. And so I'm not comfortable taking risk.
Yeah. We actually work with a lot of couples where we're co-pilot helping to come up with the strategies. But one of the primary, but one of the primary value adds of having a CFP in their life that knows their financial situation as well as they do is you've got one individual who runs the finances and the other one doesn't want to, doesn't really care. I don't want to say that negatively, but doesn't really have the aptitude or interest to understand the finances. And so if something happened to the one in the marriage, the relationship that knew all the finances, the other person is completely lost. When it comes to investments, I've seen the same thing where I'm thinking of one individual, one family that we'd served for a long time. He was very aggressive. I actually needed to tone him down, and he passed away suddenly, even just a couple of years before he was planning to retire. And his wife, she doesn't want to take any investment risk. And it's been this coaching opportunity to say, yeah, I know I don't want you to take a lot of risk either, but you need to take some risk, because if you don't take any, financially, the numbers don't all work here. So you've got to be taking some risk. Yeah. But there's different solutions, right? There's different strategies, and working with a CFP that can help you kind of talk through that risk and reward, as well as different strategies to balance that risk out. So for widows and widowers, obviously this is, if something happens, emotionally, it's just devastating, overwhelming is the word that you used earlier. Comprehensive financial planning, what does that look like? I'm assuming that it's a little bit different than a traditional relationship, but what's it look like, and how can that planning relationship and that planning process help create a lot of peace of mind?
So ideally, you're coming to us before we've had a major loss and we can be proactive. But in the event that you've experienced a major loss and haven't worked with a CFP before and you're just coming to us, it works the same. We're going to look at all 6 areas of your financial life, but we might spend time in different areas looking at kind of like that triage I mentioned earlier. What things need our attention right away, and what things can we make a checklist and check them off as we go? So like I said, things like you're making sure your bills are paid. I have sat down with a widow in my office, and I say widow because I primarily work with women as a female advisor, but I went through her bank statements with her, and we made sure all of her bills were paid. We look at our tax situation now, because there is a unique planning opportunity in the year that your spouse passes
Yep.
and where you still get to file a joint return. And so is there any last minute opportunity that we have in that year that your spouse passes to take advantage of those wider joint tax brackets?
At a time when you emotionally, you're not looking at these as opportunities at all, right? Because it's not an opportunity to be excited about, but a financial window where you could be making some decisions and pay less tax.
I would say overall, planning after you've lost a spouse, really the CFP in your life becomes that person that maybe your spouse served as too. So kind of your co-pilot, being able to bounce ideas off of, give you that peace of mind that, we've got a plan. Things are going to be okay. Yeah.
There's 6 areas to your financial life, everyone's financial life, Taylor's, mine. And so your present financial position, if you become a widow, obviously that's going to shift significantly. Your income's going to change. Bills are still going to be there, all that sort of stuff. Deciding, do you stay in the same house? Do you make some of those decisions? Present financial position, big shift. Protection planning. Your health insurance is going to shift. Life insurance potentially as well. Some of those big decisions need to be made as well. Tax planning, we talked about. Investment planning, that's the 4th area. Retirement planning. What do you want the future to look like? For a while, you're not going to have a plan. You're not going to have a direction. You're not going to have a goal. But as time passes and as you grieve, you'll create a new vision and some goals and priorities. And then your estate plan, something we didn't touch on at all, shifts completely, right?
Yes.
Documents need to be rewritten. And that's one of those other things that you might feel like, I've got to get that done within a month because you're feeling this pressure from all the emotions. No, it is urgent, but it's not so urgent. It's got to be one of the first things that you do. So those are the 6 areas of your financial life. And you need a coach, you need a guide, you need a Sherpa to help you through that, ideally prior to a big event like that. But certainly if you're dealing with that and those big financial decisions, working with a certified financial planner. So Taylor, thanks for being on the program and talking through this delicate and yet very, very vital financial situation. Make sure you're working with your certified financial planner on this. And if you don't have a CFP on your team, you can contact one on our team. You can find us online, Korhorn.com. That's Korhorn with a K. WiseMoneyShow.com. You can find us there as well. All right, there you have it. Go out and take your next wise step in your financial life.